a child of around 10 years old, back in January 2024 in Gaza. I asked my mom, "Mom, why did you die?" She said to me, "I'm here, I'm alive." So I asked, "If you're alive, why don't you come to us?" And she said, "No, my love, I'm alive in heaven."
It's from January 2024, a child around 9 years old. I want to live the
has always defined the human world, from the simplest structures to the greatest monuments. But a rebellion is underway, led by a new breed of architect that puts people before icons. Architects using the tools of their trade to restructure their surroundings and redefine their profession.
חייל! הלו? חייל! תשמע, תראה, זה היה פה, היה לנו פרויקט פה פעם, לפני שאתם נכנסתם. אני יכול להתקרב קצת? לא. למה אסור להתקרב? מה, זה רק שלכם המקום הזה? זה מקום של כולם, למה אתם בכלל פה? מי אתם שתהיו?
לא להתקדם.
למה?
ככה.
למה ככה?
ככה, אסור להתקדם.
זה הבית שלך, הצינור הזה? זה לא הבית שלך. אתה יושב פה בתוך צינור כזה ואומר לי מה לעשות, למה מה? Doesn't he look ridiculous inside his pipe house? Like being the king of the hill inside his tube. My name is Eyal Weitzman. I am an architect. I'm a writer. I'm an activist. My work is to do with the intersection of architecture and violence. Architecture and the built environment is a kind of a slow violence. The occupation is an environment that slowly was conceived to strangulate Palestinian communities, villages and towns, to create an environment that will be unlivable for the people there. The crime was done on the drawing board itself. The settlements which are here in blue have been built like wedges, not only to serve the colonists themselves, but consciously to create material damage, cutting apart the very sort of fragile Palestinian built fabric. Architecture is used by architect as a weapon. We are looking at the battlefield, and the weapons and ammunitions of it are very simple elements. They are trees, they are terraces, they are houses, they are cladding, they are barriers. Everything in this panorama is a tactical tool within the architecture of occupation. You just need to know how to decode it. The first thing I want to show you is the neighborhood of Gilo. After 1967, Israel annexes a lot for architecture to tell that story. The architectural principle of the Israeli occupation is a way of maintaining separation and exercising control. So this is the tunnel road built in 1996, now called the Apartheid Road because they are roads that simply serve the Jewish communities, the Jewish colonies and settlements to the south of Jerusalem. We have a whole Jewish neighborhood overhead, and now we are driving over a Palestinian valley.
Could I kindly ask everyone that has a seat to sit down so we can welcome
Settlements are
Francesca
built on hilltops,
in a bit.
overlooking the Palestinian inner valleys between them. The main reason that they're built on hilltops is for their self-protection and for them to dominate the surrounding. So although Israel built hundreds and thousands of structures in the West Bank, the number of typologies is very limited. They're all variation on the single or double family houses with red roof, very suburban typology. In fact, red roof is something that is mandated by law because this is allowing the military to navigate the landscape, to understand what's ours, what's there, what's friends, what's foe, where you can bomb and where not. You'd enter the house through the inner circuit, and as you move through the house, you open towards the view. The house itself is like an optical instrument, and when it is laid in rings around the hilltops, it is like a suburban scale optical device that can survey the entire territory around it. No way. No way, no. איך? מה יש לכם פה? את כל העולם. בונים לכם, יבנו לכם פה גדר ממול הבית, זה יהרוס לכם את הנוף. עדיף לכם שלא יהיה גדר.
לא יודע.
מה אתה אומר? אבל הרי באת לפה בשביל הנוף.
באתי לפה בשביל הנוף, אבל כשאתה מתחיל לעשות שמיניות באוויר ולצאת מהעבודה באמצע ולהקפיץ את הילדים ולבקש שלא ייסעו באוטובוסים ושלם מוניות ולעשות הכל שיהיו לך שתי מכוניות למשל, כשאתה לא צריך שתי מכוניות. כל זה כדי שלא ייסעו באוטובוסים, וזה היה בתקופה שהאוטובוסים פה התפוצצו בירושלים.
כן.
אני לא החלטתי לשים את הגדר הזאת, אבל אני מרגיש יותר בטוח מאז שהיא נמצאת שם. כן.
When we think about borders, when we see even the wall, we imagine a single instrument that separates Israelis and Palestinians on two sides of a map. But actually, in the Israel-Palestine frontier, the border had splintered into various border devices. There are fences around the settlements, there are blockades around Palestinian cities, there are highways that operate as borders, there are checkpoints and sterile areas and all sorts of other border devices that shrink and expand the terrain at will. To control a space, you need to create differentiation in speed of movement. When you put Israeli colonies on highways, you accelerate the movement through the space. In the same way, in every twist and turn of the terrain, Palestinians would encounter a border, a checkpoint, a fence, a valley that they cannot cross. Sometimes you can read politics on the most mundane of architecture elements. Turnstiles in Israel, when they put them as the most important instrument in checkpoints, they've reduced the arm of the turnstile for it to press against the body in case there is anything a person carries. But that creates horrific situations when people who are a little bit larger would get caught up within that turnstile. It's so cruel and degrading and reduces Palestinians to nothing more than bodies. Do you remember this view ever without a settlement?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
I was a child. We used to go there and play. But
Yeah.
after they decide to take it, the lands and do this street, we can't go there anymore.
So this is effectively the wall. It's just not a wall here, it's a fence. Which
Yes,
is,
we can't walk, we can't do anything here. If you notice that it's surrounded by them.
Yeah.
Bethlehem and Beirjala.
Yeah. What is very cruel about this tower next to the wall is that they're designed to hide the presence of the army. So you'd always assume there's somebody looking at you. You see apartheid in action at this moment here. When conflict erupts, the slow violence of the environment is being put into immediate use. Israeli soldiers move down into Palestinian towns and villages from the settlements themselves. The checkpoint hardened and nobody can move through. The border completes around them and the entire territory springs into use. In 2002, Sharon ordered the Israeli army to occupy the entirety of the West Bank as part of Operation Defensive Shield. They had no problem with the open areas, but invading the cities was somehow the most difficult part. We're now at the heart of the Jenin refugee camp. This is Palestinian Ground Zero. In 2002, the Israeli army tried to take hold of this camp, and then they've decided to enter the city by first using D9 bulldozers. The way they did it really is a kind of a design by destruction of the camp. They cut literally new street through the dense urban fabric in order to allow the tanks to come in. The resistance retreated into the core of the camp, and at the end of the battle, effectively the bulldozers collapsed the heart of the camp on those fighters. It wasn't the first time that Israel used bulldozers, but it's the first time that the bulldozers were integrated into the battlefield. The fleet of bulldozers grew exponentially, and the bulldozers become really the means of Israeli fighting in Palestinian urban fabric. The April 2002 attack on Jenin and Nablus was the laboratory for the US to think about the urban warfare in Iraq. And we're also training in Israeli training sites. It's kind of mock-up Arab cities that were built in a desert in the south. We are now in the city of Nablus. It was one of the biggest laboratories in 2002 for the development of a new type of urban warfare. Israelis were studying not only that city, but how cities operate. They understood in order to occupy the city, they need to invent and move in a city in a different manner. I started to study those tactics, which I thought were very architectural.
אם אני אנוע במבנה שמכתיבה צורת הרחוב, אני מגיש להם את יחידתי על מגש של כסף. מן הרגע הזה אתה אומר, רגע, הם מחפשים מה שנקרא את חברתי. אני צריך לחשוב איך אני נותן להם שיעור שהם לא ישכחו. לא לנוע ברחובות, להשאיר את הרחובות שוממים ונקיים. ובעצם להיכנס לבתים דרך קדיחת חורים בקירות.
What they're actually doing is they're turning private and public space upside down. The private space becomes a space of circulation. And the public space, the space of the street, is where the resistance fighters are being killed. Hello. Can I? Nasir Arafat is a Palestinian architect that lived through the Israeli invasion and is still in charge 11 years later on the ongoing project of reconstructing the city.
So that was the first invaded area, and then the troops came in and they surrounded the old city, and this is where the main destruction took place.
هذا محل الكهرباء. هذا محل الجمال. هذا اللي ورانا. وهون باب الكنيسة.
Going through the old city at that time is like going through an earthquake where everything around you is demolished. The streets were full of rubbish. Now what's done here is a comprehensive restoration for one of the quarters that was badly affected by the invasion. Can you see the arrow there?
Yes.
This is what the Israeli soldiers have used in order to indicate to the other soldiers which way you should go.
عافية حجة كيف حالك؟
Hello. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, so this lady is one of the living witnesses of what happened during the various invasions in the 8-year period, right. 2008-2010.
كنت قاعدة هيك أفرجيك هيك قاعدة.
She was smoking her water pipe.
هيك قاعدة.
When the soldiers came from the wall,
and you were?
She was as if you speak it in English. Sorry to say that. So she was telling him, off. And she continued smoking her water pipe. He went, and then the whole room behind her were blasted. But she didn't make a move. And she said, okay, I hope I will die, and I will be recorded on Guinness as the first one who was killed while smoking the water pipe in Nablus. So that was the story. I mean, you can see what it means to live in such a place.
بعدين هاي تراث.
الحمد لله بسلامتك حجة. هاي اللي بدي اخذها انا. هدية.
When when violence is enacted through architecture, architecture must somehow rise to resist it. It must find the tools, and it must find those tools within its own toolbox. Now that most war take place in a city, that most war is urban warfare, architecture becomes really the most important evidence to read the contours of that violence. We can reconstruct the battle itself and what happened by looking very closely at the ruins. I gained the confidence of the EU to fund this project called Forensic Architecture, to present architectural facts as evidence in legal and political forums. One of the major projects that we do is an analysis of drone warfare in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, and Gaza.
Forensic Architecture are working with the mandate to look at particular strikes and to do, as far as we can, accurate reconstructions against which to assess the competing claims about the strikes themselves.
In Gaza during 2008-2009, the IDF started employing a kind of a tactics of warning. They were shooting a warning missile on a roof of buildings, waiting for about 3 minutes before they demolished the buildings completely. The Salha family is one of the saddest and most horrific instances where a new kind of warfare that tries to be legal, a kind of a humanitarian war, has gone completely wrong. Dear Mr. Fayez Salha and Mr. Noor Salha, thank you very much for coming here to speak to us. Our work has been actually an attempt to reconstruct what happened between the warning shot and the lethal shot. How a family gets organized, how they understand the options facing them. The family was trying to leave the house. They divided themselves into two groups.
أنا والأشخاص اللي كانوا معي تقريبا من هاي الناحية لا عند ممر خروج أو نزول على سلم البيت.
The second group, when it was just about to exit through the main door, the big bomb hit, demolished the building, and killed 7 members of this family. Unpacking a situation like that is using a very particular story, the story of a family and the story of a house, and the traces that we can see in this house to pose a kind of a political challenge to Israel's humanitarian war in Gaza. Your personal tragedy is enormous. It's also a part of the tragedy of the Palestinian people.
وهذا العزاء هو عزاء ناقص يجب أن يكتمل في حال أن تنال كقضية عائلتي العدالة الدولية.
I love this land, and I care deeply about both peoples that live in here. And I think, looking at the landscape, I see this kind of slow process of killing. I would have loved to practice my architecture free of the constraints and violence of this conflict, but I think that to be an architect is not only to build and to contribute to this destruction of the place that I love most, but to use architecture as a way to both interpret, protest, and resist.
just to make sure we are safe. Can you confirm that police is here to protect all of us? Good.
You want still?
Hi.
Want still water or sparkling?
Yeah, I wouldn't be picky about the water right now.
Benvenuta, Francesca.
Grazie.
Grazie per esserci.
Yeah, but then when I leave...
So, I have the great pleasure of welcoming Francesca Albanese, United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the Occupied Palestinian Territories. And before I hand over to Francesca for some preliminary remarks, I would just like to inform everyone that at the last update that I received, we had 1,700 people viewing the live stream. So this may be a small room, but the virtual space we are occupying is a large one. So without further ado, Francesca, please speak to us.
You are not police, right? Camouflaging. Okay. So, I have to admit that about 75 hours in this country have made me pretty nervous. I can't wait to go back to peaceful Tunisia. Because the situation is bad for freedom of expression pretty much everywhere, and still, I've never felt this sense of lacking oxygen as I do here. So please, please, I know you're very happy to see me. Makes sense. Yes, but it's not, I mean, I'm someone who speaks of genocide. And there is a genocide ongoing, and it doesn't matter how much genocide denialism there is, we need to be really aware of what we need to do all together. So, please, please, please.